Yeah, you got to mind my forehead. It's very reflective.
Talking about your forehead. Welcome to the Audio Production Workshop. I am here with the wonderful Tom Bellamy from Losers and also the Cooper Temple Claws.
Correct.
How are things going?
It's going good. We're in London for this weekend. We did Hawley Arms yesterday, Camden Bronx Festival, and we did a session for Radio X with a guy called Chris Denman the day before that, which was awful.
Congrats on the third album. Where did you record it and how long did it take?
So we moved to Berlin 3.5 years ago, which is when we began the writing of that album.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, well, maybe it was July of that year, and just wrote and extremely isolated from the rest of the world, and finally got it out about 2 years later. We were just in this huge water factory. It's like a James Bond house. 520 square meters over 2 levels with
wow.
a big lounge with a grand piano in it, and then a trapdoor down into the studio, which had a live room and a control room. And this was after coming from a studio in London that was about 1/10 of the size, and we were all on top of each other. So we just had like freedom, and we could play 24 hours a day, and it was all set up, ready to go, and so we just stayed in there and just experimented with sound for a really long time, and went a bit mad, and lost control, and then tried to rein it back in again to finish it off, and ended up mixing it a little. Well, I mixed a little bit myself, and a friend of mine, Dan Austin, who used to work with me back in Cooper's days.
Yeah, he was from the beginning. From
So he's always been like my tech support. Because I've never been that technical, even though I'm engineering and producing a lot of things.
And I'm assuming Dan's role has moved up through the years as well, because he started as an assistant. Is that right?
Yeah. So he was working with Paul Corkett in Moles in Bath.
Mm-hmm.
So he engineered our first EPs with Paul back in like 2000, and then we just got on with him so well that we ended up getting him to produce our second album, which did really well. And then off the back of that, he just went from strength to strength. And then he worked. He's right hand man with Flood and Gil Norton, and
what amazing
just like
tricks to pick up from those guys. They're amazing producers.
Yeah, so he's just like he's a don. He's like my idol, and I wouldn't be here without him. And it's every so often Pro Tools has a whitey or whatever, and I have to phone him and be like, no, it's all gone wrong.
Does he come over to Berlin a lot?
No, so he's based in Bath, so I go there now and again. I have been working a little bit. I set up studio in Tenby in Pembrokeshire, so I was there for a while, and got to hang out with him for a bit. But he's he's the busiest man on the planet, as probably know, as being an engineer yourself. It's just it's very difficult to stop sometimes, and I guess
always plate spinning.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice to. I mean, it's quite an isolating thing, isn't it, being an engineer and a producer, that you're in a studio alone, or with a band that you don't really know or whatever, and or left to mix something on your own for the rest of the day or whatever. And it's nice to be able to speak to people who sort of know what you're going through.
Now, I remember over the years I had you in, and literally every time you'd come in, it would be, Chris, I've bought something else. When did you find that you got the recording bug? When did that kind of kick in for you?
I don't know. I guess I've always had it in me. I mean, I quite often think back now to when Cooper's got signed, and our lawyer made a remark about, he's like, well, you obviously you're going to go on and be a producer or whatever. And, it was sort of just like an aside sort of comment, but I remember thinking, oh really? I wonder why I said that. And then, but before that, it was always in the bedroom with the tiny little tape player with the, just recording all the time, just any sort of weird sound. It was just always there. I just, you know.
Do you think it changed up more when the remixing started to happen?
Yeah, so doing it like professionally, I mean, with Cooper's, I didn't have a clue about anything. I mean, you know, I really didn't, and I think that still is the case. You know, Cooper's finished, and it was almost on the same day Eddie got in contact and was like, "Oh, I've got this remix for Goose.
Yeah.
Do you want to do something?" Because I'd started doing remixes for Cooper because I was just getting bored because our third album took forever, and you know, I just had lots of energy and just wanted to see what I could do. And you know, Dan had taught me how to use Reason, and you know, I knew Pro Tools a little bit, and he taught me some of the shortcuts or whatever. And then so that was the start of my journey of actually trying to engineer and produce properly. But again, I just didn't have a clue, and you know, I'm pretty sure I've given myself tinnitus from like just not knowing how to EQ anything, and just, you know, yeah, just it seems to be getting better. I think I've got somewhere, and it's just been a long journey, but a really enjoyable one, because I've always wanted to put myself in a position where I'm uncomfortable, because you know, I used to have guitar lessons. I started off playing guitar for Cooper's, and it was like, oh, here's a blues scale. You know, this is how you play a solo. It's like, oh, well, that's all very nice and stuff, but you know, that's not where true original artists, you know, have their beginnings. You shouldn't be told what to do as an artist. It should be like, you should be finding out sounds and experimenting off your own back.
That actually brings me on to my next question, because I was going to ask, like, all equipment has a jumping off point for writing. Like, no matter what it is, there'll be a certain instrument people generally go for.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, I'm assuming guitar was your first thing for Cooper's. What is it now? Is it still guitar, or is it moved into, do you know what, I will move to this bit of kit and play with that first before ideas start rolling? Is there a bit of equipment?
Yeah, I don't know. I've only recently, only since talking to ex-Cooper's guitarist Dan about limiting myself, because I think that's been one of my biggest problems.
Too many toys.
Like all of them. It's just like, it would always be, and it was with Cooper's as well, it's just like, go into the room. It's like the first person to pick up the toy that makes the best noise or whatever. It's like, who picks up the, you know, this newest bit of kit first, and it's like, it's always a thing. It's just walk into the room and whatever happens to be on, or I don't know, you know. It was always just about experimenting with sounds, and so that I never really had a go-to instrument, and I think that's, you know, where the sort of production came from, because I could always do something, you know. And you know, I began, you know, my first instrument was the trumpet, and then guitar, and then I decided I wanted to be a drummer, and I was all right at these, you know, everything, but I wasn't brilliant at anything. And I just found that production was the answer to that, because I could sort of, you know, understand a bit of everything, but yeah, not really needed to do anything at a brilliant level, because, you know, some people are great at their instruments, and it's like, you know, I know that I'm not brilliant at anything, but it doesn't bother me, because
I think if you're creative, you're creative, and you let things, you don't have to be technically
and I think that's
brilliant to be creative.
Yeah,
you know. And that's the whole point, especially when writing songs, right?
Yeah, and I think I've let that get in the way too much, because I've always tried to make everything too perfect or whatever, and it's only really now that I'm just thinking, well, actually, you know, my dad always says, oh, you know, you come up with the ideas, and then you mess around with it for ages and ages, and then you lose where you were at the beginning, and he has got a point, because it's like, I listen back, you know, doing this last album with Losers, it's, you know, you always come up with an initial idea and you get really excited about something, and you know, you don't know what it is, but obviously there's something there that turns you on. And then you can spend forever like trying to change things or adapt things, and then, you know, you get to the end. And
with Losers, like the actual writing process and other members of the band, how does that work? Is it literally you going, right, I'm going to start and do a majority, or is it like, hey guys, all jump in? Is it what's the vibe with that?
To start with, it was Eddie saying, I've got an idea for a song, you know, he would start and hum me a melody, and then I would build a track around that. And then when I met Paul, it was more like when I used to work with Coopers. It was just like you'd walk in and be like, ding 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 ding, oh, and you know, you'd start from there, and it would literally, you'd just be building a track from nothing. But I was always the one that was facilitating people, and I'd always, you know, if anyone had any idea, you just say yes, and they'd never want to, you know, can we try a string section? Well, never had a string section, but you know, yeah, we'll try it, and if it doesn't work, then you carry on and just try and keep things open and on the move.
What's the live setup for Losers? Who's playing in the band? Because I believe there's some extra members now.
Just constantly evolving that band.
Yeah.
It's so, I think, you know, it's starting to turn into the Spinal Tap thing. I remember in Coopers and watching the thing about the drummers and thinking, oh, that's weird. And now it's happened with Losers. I think we've got this family tree that's just like gone all over the place. And we've got now, so me and Paul, who traditionally are guitarists on keyboards. I use main stage, and Paul uses a Korg, something or other, and no, it's not even a Korg, it's a Roland. And then we've got a guitarist, Pete from Philadelphia via West Byfleet and somewhere else, who plays guitar.
But it's Paul's old rig, isn't it?
It's my guitar and Paul's amp,
PV,
yeah, and a mixture of both Paul and mine's pedals, and then we have a drummer. So it seems to be working. We had a good gig yesterday, and yeah.
Now tell me about this gig. What happened to make it really special for you?
Well, Camden Rocks unfortunately weren't able to provide us with keyboard stands. I need 2 and Paul needs 1, and so instead of getting angry about it or causing a fuss, I thought, well, let's try and turn this into a positive. So I attached a guitar strap to my MIDI keyboard. Yeah. And I rocked the joint, I think.
I saw some pictures of this, and it looked like you were having the most fun ever.
It was so liberating. It really was. And I honestly think I've been waiting my whole life for this moment, because it was just like, I could just do everything I wanted. And like, you know, there's so much like stigma with guitars, isn't there? And people like, I honestly couldn't.
But it doesn't look like a guitar, that's the thing. It's a keyboard.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So hopefully it's pretty big, but it's because it's MIDI. It's really light. You know, there's nothing in it. So, but I've got all my samples on there. I've got my foot switch that can change all my patches. So I've got all my delays and reverbs and whatever there, and then I've got my keys, and you know, what more could a boy want?
Obviously in the studio now, and I'm assuming you've built up quite a collection of bits and pieces. Which bits of software or hardware could you not live without?
Well, I couldn't live without my Skywave synth, but I'd never use it, so I'm not sure whether that's answering the question, just because it's like the most crazy thing. I have a few things. I mean, my Juno, always using that on everything. You just can't really go wrong with that, and it's so versatile. Yeah, so I really use that a lot. Software wise, I get a lot of my bass sounds from Trillion. I think Massive is, I mean, I find it a bit difficult to get my head around it sometimes, but I mean, it's got some incredible sounds on there. We have a song called Turnaround that's got this one of the most like end of the world sounds right at the end, and that was from Massive. And yeah, I mean, the problem that I've had is just I've got too much stuff, and I'm trying to cut down. I use the Soundtoy stuff a lot in terms of like effects like delays and all that nonsense. I don't know really. What else have I got? I mean, I've been using a CS5 recently for lots of bass sounds, a Yamaha synth, which is just beautiful. Just trying to get back into hardware stuff, because I got caught in, you know, in that little box in there, and it's, you know, it can sap your energy a bit, and it's the one thing that has always seemed to be my thing, but I haven't really started recording it too much until recently, is this Electribe ER1, and like in the Coopers I used it for the intro to this song called AIM, which is like, it sounds like a synth, but actually it was just this, it's a drum machine, and it's just going through some guitar pedals and jamming and stuff. It's so simple. It's got 4 knobs on it that you can adapt, and, you know, a couple of hi-hat sounds or whatever, but it's just because it's so simple, and, you know, when you can really get into something, and the sounds, you know, all the sounds are good, and you know, like I was saying before with Paul and his pedals, and just know it like the back of your hand, and that's when it can just get really exciting. And it's got, you know, it's still got those sounds where it's just a little bit, you know, too far. It's like, you know, you get some keyboards where they don't go far enough, but this always has, like, you know, this horrible sort of dirty sounds that I love. And yeah, I mean, I'm starting to use that a lot now to write with, so
So workflows in the studio, are you now, I know a lot of songwriters who will pretty much these days go, do you know what, I'll put a guitar plug-in emulation on because it's just easier when dealing with it. Are you still, do you work that way, or are you actually like, do you know what, I do like miking up a cab and I do like reamping? Which way do you kind of fall with that workflow-wise?
Whatever sounds right. I mean, I've got a Paul's PV mic'd up in the studio at the moment. I've been using that for vocals, guitar, bass, whatever, but, you know, sometimes, like, it will just sit in a mix perfectly, and other times, you know, I play it and I think, oh, that sounds perfect, and then, you know, I'll stick a plug-in on it, you know, one of these reamping or CLA guitar things, and it will just be like, oh no, that's the sound there. And yeah, I mean, they're pretty effective, aren't they, for quickly trying out different amp sounds that you might not necessarily have tried.
How's about falling on, well, just playing around with drums? Do you find that, because obviously you've got a lot of space now?
Yeah.
Do you go to recording drums, or is it just like, do you know what, let's build songs first and then possibly?
I've done it all sorts of ways. At the moment, I'm just recording stuff. You know, I've just got a hi-hat and a snare, and it's just, you know, one mic, and just going for vibe. I mean, I did an album for Red Kite, which is Dan from Coopers.
I remember them.
And yeah, his second album's just coming out now. But so I did the first album, and I mean, that was an interesting thing. We DI'd all the guitars, and then you know, he'd play them, and then we just reamp everything, and he was really anal about getting the right sounds. And drum wise for that record, he had everything in his head. He's a bit special like that. And, you know, so we started and we just, you know, it would just be the kick drum, and then I'd just mic it up, and then, you know, he'd just do the kick drum bit, and then I'd set up the snare, and then we could, you know, one mic, 2 mics, whatever, and then he'd do the snare part. And then, you know, and then he'd do the hi-hat part, but knowing that if it was like a 16 pattern, that he would, you know, he'd be missing, you know, certain bits of it, or if there was a cymbal coming in, he'd, you know, and just building it up like bit by bit.
And then putting it into sample and then playing it through. So
So it wasn't just like playing one kick part and then sampling it for the, you know, and putting it through, copy and pasting. He would play the whole kick drum part for the whole song, and then go back to start, and then he'd play the snare part for the whole song. Wow. And it was all in his head, not for just one song, for the whole album.
How many tracks on the album, can you remember?
It's like 11. And he started doing it, and I was like, well, you can't be doing this. You can't. And he was like, no, it's all in my head.
Where can you see Losers moving on from here? Are you kind of you looking at doing another album kind of in the next kind of 6 months or so?
Yeah, definitely. I think the last one was so intense. We just sort of need to slow down a little bit and reevaluate things, and just work out what direction we're going to go in, I think, because we're all sort of it's a weird one, because, you know, we all input. There's no sort of leader or anything, and we, you know, we could go anywhere, and we don't want to make the same record again. And you know, this last record was really full on and harsh, and I think it'd be nice to make an album that was, you know, a flip side to that was maybe a bit more easy on the ears.
Yeah.
But there's never any real like, oh, we're gonna do this. It's just, you know, you're just affected by your surroundings, and we've got a new studio now, and that's gonna just change everything completely as well. And yeah, who knows? We'll just keep doing what we do.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Chris.